biggest challenge was realizing that it's not going to be all roses and it's not going to be all great at first, and that people are going to kind of question you and challenge you, and you're not going to win everything. In sales, we always say, 10 to 20% of a success rate, or 10 to 20% of the time getting a yes is a win. Having to recognize that and realize that that means 80 to 90% of the time that you're going to get shot down. 80 to 90% of the time you're going to be told no. That doesn't mean you just give up. That just means you're on to the next one.
Welcome to the Money Medicine Podcast, where we discuss strategies to grow your healthcare business, tools to accelerate that growth, and how top practices and pharmacies are executing and winning. All right, we are back with podcast number 27. We are going back to back with guests. This time we brought another special guest. But before we get into him, as always, I'm joined by Logan Morse, PharmD. All the accolades. What are they, Logan? List them off for the.
Oh gosh! So I'm a fellow of American College of Apothecary. I've got a fellowship in anti-aging and integrative medicine. I don't know. There's a lot of letters. They don't mean much. They're just there.
Okay. Well, Logan's got the letters. If you need any, just ask him. You can borrow them. But our special guest today is none other than Aaron McDonough from Towncrest Pharmacy in Iowa. So first and foremost, Aaron, appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Cool. Well, for those of you that, for the listeners that don't know you, not to do the corny intro, but tell us a little bit about Towncrest Pharmacy, get people up to speed with just like a general overview of what you guys got going on in Iowa.
Yeah, so Towncrest Pharmacy actually started a long, long time ago in the 60s, and it was kind of based out of Iowa City. And then in 2012, when I was not even a pharmacist yet, and my dad was a business partner with a couple other people, they had purchased Solon Towncrest Pharmacy, which is about 10 miles north of us. And then we kind of ran with those two locations until 2021, which is when I graduated from University of Iowa College of Pharmacy. And throughout pharmacy school, I was always really interested in business. And always, nowadays when I talk about it, I say I kind of use pharmacy as my vehicle for business, but I feel like I'm business first, which is not very common in pharmacy, as I'm sure we'll get into. But in 2021, I had this project where I said, hey, I really think that we could get into functional medicine, drug-induced nutrient depletion, do prescription compounding, kind of, the things that revolve around cash-based services. And I did that because I was on a rotation actually in Arizona at a pharmacy. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I bet there's a huge market for this in Iowa. And so after I graduated, we bought this brand new place and then we gutted it. And then I designed what is now Towncrest Wellness Apothecary today, which, as I mentioned, is a cash-based compounding pharmacy, functional medicine clinic. And on the other side of it, we actually moved our long-term care pharmacy because there was actually two buildings in one. And we also then purchased a handful of other pharmacies. So now we're up to 8 pharmacies, 6 community pharmacy sites, kind of the ambulatory community pharmacy sites throughout Iowa, a lot of rural locations, long-term care pharmacy. And then where my office and a lot of my work and efforts get brought to is Towncrest Wellness Apothecary, the cash-based functional medicine and compounding pharmacy.
Yeah, lots going on. So one question for me, like right off the bat, because we have a number of people, I guess, that we talk to. So we hear a lot of kind of the legacy element of like, you got a father, you got a mother that's like in the pharmacy business, and then kind of their kid gets into the business as well. But I'm one of those weirdos, or I guess maybe in the other group, where like I got pushed out of pharmacy. Like I used to work in the pharmacy, and all the pharmacists would be like, hey, you're a little pain in the butt, in here just causing havoc. But when you grow up, don't become a pharmacist. Like I remember working as a tech in the summers, and they would just like, don't be a pharmacist. So what did your dad do differently? Like what was different about like growing up in a pharmacy family that like you wanted to become a pharmacist. What did I guess that childhood look like, and before you went to Iowa for pharmacy school?
Well, there's kind of a funny story to that because I probably had a very similar upbringing, and my dad at one point was telling me not to go into pharmacy because of the challenges that were surrounding it. But before all that, because my dad became an owner in 2006, I want to say, so I was about 12, 13 years old, and so I started my time at the pharmacy by being the janitor, and I was cleaning the toilets and doing all that jazz. And now I always say started from the bottom, now we're here. But I literally was at the bottom of the totem pole, and so I was around it my entire upbringing, teenage years and into adulthood. And I'm not exactly sure where the business side of me came from. There's probably some genetics component to that, and that's why I am who I am. But I was always around it, and so I saw my dad put in a lot of work towards it. And when it's your own business, it's yours, it's your baby. And I really like the idea of having the autonomy and the authority to be able to do whatever you want today and tomorrow, and not have to listen to somebody else or go up the corporate chain of command. And so I think it was just a little bit of all of that kind of around me that really pushed me towards that direction, but not something that was like, hey, Aaron, you need to go down this road. Because I remember in 2013 when things started getting really challenging with reimbursement. That's kind of when PBM started hitting people with really bad reimbursement. And from there is almost like, hey, maybe you shouldn't go into pharmacy. Maybe you should, look into something else. And I, at the time, I was always like, yeah, I might go into pharmacy, might go into physical therapy. I'm kind of interested in health sciences, but I really don't know what I'm going to do with that. So when I enrolled into undergrad at Iowa, I think I was pre-physical therapy actually. And so really what that doesn't mean anything in undergrad, because you can do it early. They're all the same prerequisites. So I took the prerequisites. I actually worked at the pharmacy. And when it came time to actually apply to pharmacy school, I looked into Iowa, looked into Tennessee, and I looked into Yukon were my three finalists. And at the end of the day, I really thought that I might lose out on a business opportunity, or at least understanding the learning opportunities that exist at home near close to the pharmacies that I would work at. And so I chose to go to Iowa. And throughout my schooling at Iowa, I still don't know why I was so drawn to business, but I was always interested in submitting business plans and getting involved with NCPA and their business plan competition, which is completely different from what I was in undergrad. Undergrad, Aaron was not the academic guy. He was out doing his own thing. Um, we won't dive into that too much, but and then when I got into pharmacy school, it's just something clicked, and I was like, well, this is my, I have to figure out the rest of my life at this point. And so I remember submitting all these business plans. I probably did 10 throughout my time at the College of Pharmacy, and I was involved in a lot of organizations, and I never won a single one. And I was like, man, I suck. I am really not good at business or whatever. I beat myself up so much about it. But I just kept on submitting them. I was like, one of them have to hit. And they never did win. I got closest I got was we got second place my fourth year of pharmacy school in the National Community Pharmacy Association business plan competition. And I actually just spoke about this last week because I was teaching at the College of Pharmacy, and I said, man, if there's anything I would have changed in my entire 4 years of pharmacy school is not being so hard on myself. Because I think out of all the business plan competitors that I had, when I look back at it, I was the only one who actually ended up owning a business and moving forward with that direction. So I think it was just the interest, the challenge. I think hearing my dad say, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't go into this because PBMs are kind of have their grip on this, and it's really challenging in pharmacy." I never really backed down to a challenge. I like challenges. I think it's fun. And so I think that's really what drew me into the business side of it. And to this day, I feel like I'm always open to a new challenge, whether that means I'm adding another 2 hours of work onto my day every day. I just think it's fun. I like the idea of knowing that if this is successful, it's because of me, but also on the other side, if it fails, it's because of me too. I like having that in my control.
Yeah, so much to unpack there. So I'll kind of start here. So you get out of pharmacy school, you're gung ho, like super excited to like own and start a business, right? Which is awesome. Where do you feel like you struggled most in kind of your earliest days of kind of coming in? Your dad's the owner, like now you come in business, like I guess what did that process look like too? From getting some ownership out of college, and what does that look like today?
Yeah, I think at this, like I just mentioned, with the whole self-doubt thing and the imposter syndrome, I felt like it took a couple years for me to figure that part out. I think the biggest challenge for me, because when I pitched this ownership position and why I should become an owner and why Towncrest should allow me to become an owner, I said I'm going to be one of the first salespeople in the community pharmacy setting, because I didn't think that community pharmacy had a lot of salespeople. And so what that meant was I would go do a lot of outreach. My time would not be spent at the bench. It would be spent going around the community and surrounding communities to get people aware of the services that we wanted to do and that we could do with drug-induced nutrient depletion, compounding, functional medicine, etc. And so I remember my first time I actually got in with the University of Iowa, and it was the women's health clinic. I wanted to talk to them about compounded hormone replacement therapy. Probably 2 weeks after graduation, maybe 4 weeks after graduation. And one of the providers, it was a group of providers, some nurses, just administrators, a lot of people were in this room, and didn't have, they wanted nothing to do with me. So I'm trying to talk to them about our hormone replacement compounds and how they can collaborate with us. And I'm like, this is great. We're going to get so much business out of this. And they just were grilling me, and it was terrible. And I'm like, this is so hard. I don't think I'm going to be good at this. And I think at that point, and again, another light clicked, and I was just like, well, I could do one of two things here. One, give up and call myself a loser and, just go the other way. Or two, I can try again. And so from that meeting, I asked them if they would have a follow-up meeting with me in a couple weeks or maybe a month later. And for that next month, every single thing that they doubted me, every single thing that they said wasn't evidence-based, every single thing that they questioned, I came back with answers to. And when I went back to that meeting, I was so nervous. My heart was pumping and everything. But I ended up getting some business out of that. We got one of the providers out of the 10 in the room actually was like, he came back and he answered the questions I had, and I'm willing to give that business a try. And they sent a prescription to our pharmacy, not that day, but like a month later. And I still remember that was the first like real new prescription for a compounded medication we got at the pharmacy. And I had a student at the time. They're like, hey, Aaron, somebody faxed this with attention Aaron on it. And I was like, what is that? Oh, that was a templated compounded hormone replacement prescription that I sent them 3 months ago to use. And that's what I got so excited off that one little win. I'm like, I'm taking this to heart, and that's going to be my cycle for this. And so, again, the biggest challenge was realizing that it's not going to be all roses and it's not going to be all great at first, and that people are going to kind of question you and challenge you, and you're not going to win everything. In sales, we always say 10 to 20% of a success rate, or 10 to 20% of the time getting a yes is a win. Having to recognize that and realize that that means 80 to 90% of the time that you're going to get shot down. 80 to 90% of the time you're going to be told no. That doesn't mean you just give up. That just means you're on to the next one. Every no is one step closer to a yes.
Yeah, that's so true. It's a lot of maybe gut punch, just punches that, like, you got to take like the just consistent no's and just keep showing up with a smile, keep showing up to the next person. Like, they don't know, like they can't know that you just had a no, right? And that's a hard thing for a lot of people, especially maybe pharmacy and whatnot. You're not typically used to that sales, kind of term, which I know a lot of people don't like to talk about. Is kind of the selling portion of selling yourself, selling your business, selling your services as a place that you trust and want to work with. So, I think there's a lot there. So with your time, how has it transitioned from, initially getting some ownership and, starting out on, kind of more on the outreach side? Is that still kind of what your position looks like now at Towncrest, or largely kind of your segment that you're responsible for, or where have your responsibilities kind of shifted since, becoming an owner?
Yeah. So usually in the world of shifting responsibilities, you allocate less time towards one responsibility and move that over. You shift it over to another responsibility. I feel like I don't do that, and I just add hours instead. So my responsibilities, although have changed, the beginning responsibilities, a lot of the outreach stuff still remains. And so what I don't have to do, which is what I had to do in the beginning, was do a lot of staffing to get the business on its feet. So I don't have to do that anymore. Now we have pharmacists to take care of the responsibilities, although I'm still at the pharmacy majority of the time because I like to be able to answer the questions and help with operations and whatnot. But I am the point person for pretty much all of the providers that send business our way. And so I think that was a big selling point that I said to all these providers is not only do you get a local pharmacy, but you get a local pharmacist. And that means you get access to me at all times. And I pitched 24/7. And sometimes I regret saying 24/7, but I said, you get access to me 24/7. You answer, you call me with any questions, you text me with any questions, email me, whatever your mode of communication is, you get access to me. And so I still have that. And I don't dislike that. I like to be a resource for people. I like the idea that people can message me with their health related questions and I can provide an answer for them. I like being a person that somebody calls and says, "Hey, I have no idea what to do with this patient because this is, too complex for me. I want to send them your way." I like that idea to be that person. And so that still exists. And really, from what grew on top of that was one, continuing to get more providers and being that contact person for more providers. But that actually turned into new business opportunities. And so I was just talking with you prior was the infusion clinic. And so now my referring providers are not just referring patients to us, but now they're saying, I'm entrepreneur because I own my own family practice clinic or whatever kind of clinic they own. And he's clearly entrepreneurial. Perhaps we could start a business together and meet an unmet need in the community. And so what that looks like now is a lot of times I'll have providers or other stakeholders in the community or other businesses that say, hey, let's collaborate together to further advance business, to further advance patient care, to further advance our community as a whole.
Yeah. That's a lot of doors open up when you're so out there, you're so you become well known. There's just like opportunities and doors that swing open that don't previously. Now, as it pertains to kind of being out there in the community, I know Logan and I have had some different conversations around detailing and kind of what's worked, what doesn't. Like, how long did it take you to kind of get some traction, and what are outside of just maybe building trust over an extended period of time, which I know isn't the silver bullet answer that everyone's kind of looking for. Like, what do you think has led to the success for you in that I guess segment of your responsibilities?
Yeah. Well, first, the timeline it took to actually get consistent referrals, that took months, 3 to 6 months. I felt like I always tell people it takes at least 3 months to see the fruitions of your efforts 90 days ago. So if you started marketing a service today, you might not see the benefits for that for 90 days. And that's okay. That just means you have to start today and grind it out. And for that first 3 months, you might not see a single benefit from that. But after 3 months, hopefully you do. And then from there, hopefully it just starts to compound over time. No pun intended. But I see the opportunity as it relates to that kind of taking many, many months and time to build up over time. But I, I think that, there's never a point that you're just all of a sudden the subject matter expert and you're infallible or flawless. Just the other day, I had a provider calling me and they're complaining that we're talking about drug induced nutrient depletion. And the bigger you get, the more relevant you get, the more pushback you're going to receive because the wider you cast your net, the more people who disagree with you you're going to attract. And so yes, we do consistently get good feedback from patients and from providers, but of course, you're still going to get the negative feedback or that I disagree with you. And I think being able to combat that with evidence-based answers and knowing in the back of your head that because this particular provider said I sounded kind of scammy when I was just talking about coenzyme Q10 for statins. He said that sounded kind of scammy. I was like, no, this is backed by the evidence. And if you'd like to, we can sit down sometime. I'll buy you some coffee and we'll go through the literature together. And I know that I could do that with him if he actually took me up on that offer, but I knew that he wasn't going to. But at the end of the day, I know that I'm going to get pushback, but I also know that what I'm doing is right for the patient, right for pharmacy. And I know that it's backed by the evidence, backed by the literature. So for every one bad apple or one bad feedback or piece of feedback that I get from a provider, I've got 9 other providers who say, hey, this is a fantastic service. Hey, patients are loving this. And then I also have the patient feedback saying, thank God that this exists in the community, because, my other pharmacists or, the other pharmacies in town don't talk to me about this, and the opportunity doesn't exist to get that type of education. So yeah, I think that it takes time to get that rapport with patients and with providers, but that doesn't mean that over a certain period of time that nobody's ever going to push back on you. The more business you get, the more opportunities that you get in the community, you're probably going to get more pushback and more negative comments too. And, diving into social media too, I still get those. I remember my first viral video had to end up taking down because I wasn't ready for that. All the negative
I
feedback.
remember you texting me about it.
Yep. And I think if I were to hindsight's 2020, if I were to go about that differently, I would have left it up there and just backed every piece or every negative comment with evidence and with information that would support the recommendations that I was making. And so I think it takes time to realize that people are going to push back on you, whether it's a provider or whether it's someone behind their keyboard on their computer. People are going to push back on you. They might be kind of ruthless, but if you know what you're doing is right and you know that it's bettering patient care and bettering pharmacy and that you're helping people, your skin becomes thick to the point that that doesn't bother you anymore. But it still exists, and it still, comes my way, and it will always come my way, and it'll probably continue to grow as we get larger and larger, because as I mentioned, you cast the net even further, even wider, there's going to be some negative pushback and feedback too.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you highlight some of the negatives that come along with it, because I think it's very easy to talk about an opportunity and only talk about the good sides of it, which there are plenty, but there's also the flip side, which is the maybe comments, the by strangers, the comments maybe by friends, if like you start to make content or you start to be a little bit more outspoken in marketing the business. I think there's a lot of things that derail people, and it's not that they don't see some results. It's just that they can't handle the negative side of it as well. So I think that's great that you kind of touch on that, because just giving people that fuller picture of, hey, if you're signing up for this, you're also signing up for that. And I know, Logan, you've had your fair share of pushback or comments and stuff like that as well. So I know that Aaron's experience is not unique to him.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And I think one of the things is it almost makes you question yourself and your knowledge sometimes, because you're like, oh, did I say it wrong? Or like you look back at your notes and in your information, you're like, no, I said that right. Like this person's just crazy. Like sometimes it makes you question yourself, and that's good, because then it really concretes that information back in your brain. And so that way, when you do speak it, you're speaking the right stuff. But there's been times where someone's been like, yeah, well, you told me to take this by mouth, but it's really, you're supposed to take that sublingually. And it's like, yeah, you got me there. Like I said that wrong. I apologize. Like it's going to happen. You're going to screw up. And sometimes even coming out with like a video of like, hey, I screwed up. People understand, like it happens. So it's definitely a fun little adventure going through and finding all the internet trolls and everyone else who's out there to get you, because everyone's always going to look for a fault. You just hope that you're speaking to the individuals who really want help, and that's the big piece there.
And I think you made a good point. We're not flawless. We are going to make mistakes every once in a while, but the second you believe that you're flawless and that you don't make mistakes, that is a problem.
Yep.
And I think that there's a lot of people who are closed-minded, and they think what I know is the only thing that exists. And at that point, you're not helping the patient, you're not helping patient care, and you're really not helping yourself, and you're not learning anymore. And so a big thing that goes into this is you're a lifelong learner. And I learn every single day. If I knew it all, that would be great, but that would not be great, because that means I not learning. So I think there's that old adage that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you and know more, and you need to not be upset about that. You keep your mind open and you learn every single day. And that's not only going to be good for patient care, and that's not only going to be good for clinical practice, but that's good for business as well.
Yeah. Now, speaking of hopefully what's good for business, talk to us a little bit about the recent rollout of your cost plus model and how that's going. I think there's probably a lot of people curious about it, because Obviously, it's become more famous more recently, but there's a lot of speculation of, does it work? How does it work? It should be cost plus what? Like, what does it actually look like on the other side of this, scary transition? So I guess, yeah, any sort of color around how long you've been doing it, how's it going, and what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the things you're working through, I think would be awesome to know a little bit more about.
Yeah, so we actually got involved in a cost plus model a long time ago, or at least cutting out the PBMs and the middlemen a long time ago when we started doing direct contracting with employers. And so that's a big thing that's going to continue to roll out. But then we realized, hey, what if somebody would benefit from paying the cash price, but they really have no idea? And so that's when we rolled out the cost plus pharmacy, and we had our pharmacy manager at the wellness apothecary go through all of the expensive copays that we see for cheap drugs. And we tasked him saying, "Hey, I want you to highlight all of those expensive copays for drugs that we could probably buy for a couple dollars." And we did that. And then we called those patients and said, "Hey, you have an opportunity to save this amount of dollars over the course of a year by doing this cost plus or cash paying model." And we ended up finding just, right off the bat of our current patient population, so not even marketing it to new patients, but our current patient population, we saw around 150 patients that would actually save money by paying the cash price. So recall, paying the cash price for your drug, oftentimes one is it is saving the patient money, and oftentimes it's going to be more financially viable for the pharmacy as well. So I think that's a nice idea for our pharmacy, is to know that we're not losing money on prescriptions. But I think the important thing to note with the cost plus model is that the drug, the value of the prescription drug is not what's going to make pharmacists rich anymore. There's no such thing as just making money off of dispensing a prescription drug, because anybody can dispense a drug. Anybody doesn't take a doctorate degree, and there's all these online vendors. There's anybody can find a way to get a cheap drug. And so if you think that you're going to make money off the prescription drug, that's just not going to be a sustainable business model. But if we can minimize our loss on the drug, and then once we get the patient to utilize our pharmacy and be able to stay with our pharmacy because we're not or they're not getting forced to other preferred pharmacy networks, then we have an opportunity to talk to them about pharmacy services. And so a big thing for pharmacy services might be a drug-induced nutrient depletion consultation, just doing an annual comprehensive medication review, talking to them about pharmacogenomics, talking to them about other supplements that might be helpful for them, and then talking to them about just chronic disease state management. And so our cost plus pharmacy, implementing that was not like, yes, we're going to be rich now, I'm going to go buy a new yacht and I'm going to retire early. It was, let's minimize our loss and let's maintain our patient demographic. So now that we have opportunities to talk about clinical services that the pharmacy can provide. And that is how a pharmacy can be sustainable, and how they can actually generate revenue and therefore profit, is not by the drug, but by maintaining the patient who takes the drug, minimize the loss that they're getting from dispensing the drug, and talk to them about the pharmacist's value of clinical services. That's not only going to be good for the community or for the patient, but I was just talking this morning with a broker who is dealing with a lot of medium to larger employer sizes who are like, hey, self-insurance is the way to go. And what we're seeing is our reduced per member per month cost for those people who utilize a pharmacy who does clinical services. And so I see the cost plus model being the prime vehicle of, one, we're going to save the employer money by not overcharging them on a drug that doesn't need to be charged that much for. But two, let's talk to them about clinical services and how we can maintain the health and wellness of their employees, so that in 2, 3, 5, 10 years, the employee doesn't have an unnecessary hospitalization or an emergency department visit, or just expenses related to not having their health and wellness under control. So the cost plus model, to summarize all that, is financially more viable for a pharmacy, also for the patient, but it's mainly leveraged to keep patients at the local level so we can talk to them more about clinical services.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction too, and speaks to a couple different things. So the first thing that I pick up on that is just changing the model isn't enough, right? So just because you change the model, if you don't have maybe as much experience and or expertise in some of those clinical services and or supplements, you might have changed your model and maybe negated some losses, but you're not able to, kind of do more with that patient to increase the value of what they could be worth to the pharmacy, but then also the difference that you can make for the actual patient. So I think that kind of speaks to the importance of maybe not looking at some of these decisions in such a short time horizon, because it might take months to years, depending on where you're starting at, to acquire the skills to be able to actually see the full value of, making that change. So, that just jumps out to me of like, you got to stack all these other things to where this one change is really meaningful. But if you don't have those other things, you can switch the model and probably not have that much of a material difference in the business. Would that be how you guys kind of see it too?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that something that we've always said is let's train our staff to practice how we believe that pharmacy should be practiced, even if that doesn't mean the payer reimbursement for clinical services is there today. Because the future of pharmacy is going to have to be utilizing pharmacists as case managers for chronic disease states. That's going to happen. I mean, there are primary care shortages. Pharmacists are the most accessible, and they know how to manage chronic diseases like hypertension, diabetes, asthma, etc. And if they don't know how to practice that way because they never decided to go down that route because the payment model wasn't there at first, then when the payment model is there, it's going to be too late, because guess what? If there's an opportunity, people are going to flock to that. And so that has always been a big thing with our business is we want you to practice at the top of your license today, even if that doesn't mean you're going to get paid for your service by the payer. Mm-hmm. Now, we always believe in cash-based services too that patients can kind of go into, because I don't believe that I should do a full 30-minute evaluation on a patient and not get paid for that. But I do believe that every patient deserves a good 5-minute workup at drug utilization review every single time that they get a prescription filled. 3 to 5 minutes. Maybe we're assessing for drug-induced nutrient depletion. Maybe we're going to do a hypertension screening or diabetes screening, whatever that may be. Just a quick 3 to 5 minute touch point. But if it requires more, then that is either a cash paying service or hopefully a payer program or a grant project that we actually are getting paid for the more extensive time spent with the patient.
Yeah, that's so smart. I mean, yeah, there's just so much I want to get into there, but I'll bite my tongue a little bit. But I think that's really well said. I really like the practice at the top of, or would you say practice at the top of your profession?
Top of your license, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really like that. I think that's a good way to look at it. So, one thing I want to ask about is, the business side and kind of where you've continued to maybe learn and find valuable resources, information, etc., that has helped Towncrest. I know I won't get into specifics, but we've been working together for a little bit over a year now, so I know that you guys were preparing for some of the challenges that you thought were coming to pharmacy this year. You guys have been thinking about things in advance. It definitely seems like you guys got a sharp team over there. So I guess, where's a lot of that source of maybe business acumen come from? And then where, between your ownership, do you guys continue to spend time or learn so that you guys can continue to be, better and better owners for Towncrest?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. I think a lot of pharmacy business owners work in the business as opposed to on the business. And that was something that we realized when we finally had all 4 of us owners together, because I was the last 25% that came to the table in 2021. That's when we realized our efforts need to be working on the business as opposed to in the business. You see a lot of pharmacy owners who are just like, hey, I'm going to work the bench behind the counter, not do outreach, just be the staff pharmacist all day long. And that's not going to be sustainable for growth. That's not going to create new opportunities. And so really what we recognized first was if we want to have opportunities to grow our business, we have to be freed up. Our time needs to be freed up so that we're not spending that only staffing and checking prescriptions. So what does that mean? It means you have to find a pharmacist or pay a pharmacist to do those responsibilities. So what does that mean from a business owner? Well, now I have to pay for another pharmacist's salary. And so I think the business mind comes from being it's do or die. It's I have to make enough revenue to cover my employees, but also to cover myself as a business owner who also makes a salary and be able to hopefully turn a profit so then I can pay back the shares that I purchased as well as the loans that I'm taking out to expand my business. And so that's kind of our mindset is you either do it or you have the potential of dying. And you see that in community pharmacy nowadays. A lot of them are falling off the map and a lot of the practices are dying and we don't want to be that. And so what does that mean? It means that I have to grind it out, put in these long days that hopefully will pay off in the long run. But it also meant that I had to get off from behind the bench and really work on the business. And so I think, the opportunity of building a business and expanding a business all takes risk, and there's risk associated with that. Anybody who, grows a huge company never would say there was no risk involved with that. Of course there's risk involved with that, because in order to build a company, typically that means you get just enough capital that the bank is willing to give you another loan, and then you take that loan and then you reinvest that, and then you do that over and over and over again. I mean, they do that in real estate too. That's called the way of investing in yourself and the way of investing in your business. But there's always risk to that. But you can minimize your risk by not being kind of a silent owner and just saying, hey, I own the company, but I'm going to go sit in my living room and not work. So people always ask me, oh, as a business owner, you have the flexibility to work as little as you want. I go, well, I guess that's true, but that's certainly not in my best interest to not work, because I got loans to pay, I got bills to pay, and I've got employees to pay. And if I can't make those bills, then we got a problem on our hands. And so I think, yeah, to answer your question is it's almost do or die. And I'm a doer. We're all of our business partners. We're doers, and we want to do, and we want to grow, and we want to expand, and we're all on the same wavelength of business, and that's very important to our business. So I think that we share similar mindsets of how we're going to grow and expand our business practice.
Yeah. Yeah. As kind of the face, I'd say in many ways of Towncrest, with the marketing that you guys are doing, or the content that you're specifically doing. Talk a little bit about, of all the opportunities you got, 6 stores, or, you've got a lot of different projects going on. Why make content? Why, pursue that opportunity of all the opportunities, and then to kind of piggyback off that, like, what have you seen from, this at this point, kind of a year or so of making content? What have you seen from, relationships with providers or relationships with patients, and obviously, growing the business as well?
Yeah, so I think the added benefit of making content is I can reach more people faster. And so if I wanted to reach, 1,000 people personally and go knock on everybody's door and talk to them about a service that I can have or a product that I have, that's going to take me so much time. But if I spend 30 minutes making a video, maybe another 30 minutes editing a video and putting it on social media, and maybe throwing some money on a Facebook ad, I can then reach thousands of people in a very short period of time. And so I think the learning experience that I had for content on Facebook, which I never thought I was going to be a content creator, or sometimes my friends give me a hard time, call me an influencer, whatever it may be. I never thought that. In fact, asked me 3 years ago, I would have made fun of me for even thinking that I would be that type of person. But I also see huge opportunity there. And I think the opportunity that exists is, one, enhancing patient care, but two, great for the business too. And it actually minimizes the work that I would have had to do to actually organically achieve outreach in a way that wouldn't be facilitated with social media. So I mean, every day, whenever I give people my elevator pitch, I always say, a lot of my day nowadays is talking to people on Facebook Messenger. Because we make a lot of content, we get a lot of comments, and I believe that that's an opportunity for me to not just get a one-time patient, but perhaps a lifelong patient. And so I think that there's a huge value in social media. I think there's a huge value in marketing your services. And I think that's another thing that a lot of pharmacy owners and pharmacy professionals are missing is they're like, we have this great service, we have this great pharmacy, we have this great business offering, but they don't realize that if nobody knows about it, it's not going to go anywhere. And so that's where social media comes in. And that's where creating content is so important to me, because we have, and we know this, we have tons of great services. Even though we have only been on this podcast for 30 minutes, probably have 100 other services that we could probably spend another 10 hours discussing that haven't even came to the top of my head because we're involved in so many different things. And so I utilize content and social media to be able to express that potential opportunity that might interest a patient or two, or maybe 10, or maybe 100. But unless I made that content, then there's no way that they would ever be able to know that I can actually do that, or that we have that potential service in our bag. So social media has been a huge opportunity to be able to get the word out there, and to get new customers, and to retain new customers as well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to social, similar to whether it be the outreach that you're doing, or just actions in general, if you judge it on too short of a time horizon, you don't see the compounding effects of that effort. So a year later, like, have you felt the difference in the business? Do you notice a higher conversion, or just maybe more providers that you reach out to are already generally aware of who you are, have seen you before? Like, what are some of those benefits that you've become to realize after being so consistent over a period of time?
Yeah, I remember in the beginning days, like thinking there would never be that tipping point of it being worth my time to create content. And now I get really excited about creating content, even though the same potential for success exists, that in sales, that 10 to 20%, that probably still going to be like that in content creation. But again, every flop of a video, as I like to call it, is one step closer to a banger of a video that goes viral. And so, yeah, now, I mean, nowadays, because we've had a handful of those videos that have reached 100,000, I think we actually just surpassed 1 million views on the original video. Now, because we have that in our bag, we see a lot of people who already know of us, whether that's a provider, or a lot of patients. We get a lot of patients that call our pharmacy now. Actually, sometimes they're in tears because they're so happy that there is somebody, talking to them about a condition or a concern that they may have had in a different way that no one has ever talked to them about. Because sometimes they get labeled as, you are a person with this condition, and there's one or two ways to treat this condition, and there's no other option for you. And then they hear a video or see a video, and then they hear somebody talk about it in a different way. That really is emotional to them a lot of times. So we've had plenty of people call us and say, even from like, we had someone just the other day call from Atlanta, and they're like, I'm in tears because I saw your video about this, and you know what, I think my mom could benefit from you too, and I have this friend that could benefit too. I'm going to refer them all your way. So again, compounding in a way that is going to grow and scale our business, just by creating a video that talks about diabetes, or a video that talks about ADHD. And people see that and they're like, this resonates with me, and I bet that resonates with my friend, and I bet that's going to help my mom too. And that helps providers too, when they're like, a patient keeps on asking me about natural remedies for a specific condition or symptom, but I have no idea what to do. Well, now they have someone that they can refer to, that they can trust. And so that has also built over time as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That is, I'm sure, one of the cooler aspects of creating content is those phone calls, is the thank yous, is the, this really makes a difference. And I know, again, Logan, you see that too with a lot of the patients that you work closely with. It's weird, because I know we kind of live in this world where you expect people to know things, be exposed to things, but I'm sure on a very consistent basis for the both of you, it almost maybe shocks you that some information that you believe is so basic and probably redundant is groundbreaking for patients in their first exposure, and then has very meaningful effects, on their lives.
Absolutely. When you talk about a topic that's very elementary to you, and you might talk about it every single day, you maybe kind of forget how that is not as rudimentary towards somebody who hasn't heard of that before. And so, as you mentioned, that could be groundbreaking to them. So that's why it's always important to me that, even though I might think that everybody knows what I'm talking about, always go back to foundations, always go back to ground zero so that they have the opportunity to hear it and then grow upon their knowledge from that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one other thing to add is people don't realize what not normal is. They're so used to feeling like crap that they don't even realize like the way that they feel is not normal. So I was talking to a patient about bowel movements, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I go like once a week, sometimes every 4 days." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not normal. Like, you got some issues going on. Like, let's talk about that. Like, do you have gas and bloating? Do you have diarrhea, constipation? Like, does it flip flop? Yeah, actually, all those." And I was like, "Yeah, see how this isn't normal? Like, let's talk about what is normal." And really bringing them back to just asking those questions. And I think that's such a unique thing that community pharmacies can bring, and especially Aaron, like what you're doing with social media is that's so powerful because you can talk about those things and go through that and explain and give opportunities for those individuals to actually feel normal again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a big world out there. A lot of people.
To segue on top of that, I think aging, and obviously that would be important to you, Logan, being credentialed in anti-aging medicine. But I think that as a population, people think that because I'm aging, it's inevitable that I'm going to feel a certain way.
Right.
And so I think talking to people about chronic fatigue syndrome all the time, I'm like, "Are you tired?" "Well, I'm 65 years old. This is what my life is nowadays." Well, no. Let's talk about metabolic optimization. Let's talk about insulin resistance. Let's talk about mitochondrial health. And I love how it all comes back to biochemistry as a pharmacist, nerding out on those types of things, and how I can always bring it back to evidence-based practice too. It is all biochemistry. Our inputs are just different. They're not medications, they're nutrition, they're nutrients. Right. And so it is all biochemistry, and it is, helping people change how they feel so that they don't think that getting old or aging, shouldn't even say getting old, but aging is associating with feeling worse. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just because as you age, that means if you have adapted poor lifestyle behaviors, you're 1 year even further away from actually eating healthier. If you stopped eating healthier or stopped eating healthy and exercising when you were 30 and now you're 60, well, now it's been 30 years since you've been improving or since you've been adopting into lifestyle behaviors that are healthy for you. Now, if you're 20 or if you're 35 and you've only been doing it for 5 years, you're not going to feel as bad, but it's just going to build up over time. So I love being able to talk to the patients who might just think that they're feeling a certain way because they're getting older, and just saying, well, no, we can just change that. It is modifiable.
Yeah, I always use the analogy of changing your oil in your car. And it's so simple that patients understand, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I should probably, consider hormone replacement therapy, or I should consider supplementing with a really good multivitamin that's not just gonna, shoot through my system and end up in my stool." Like, it's truly amazing to see those individuals start to feel better. And I think one of the issues that sometimes we run across, and I'd be very curious to kind of hear what you kind of do, is, one of the feedback that you get with cash-based practices, cost plus, I'm sure as well, is like, how do you handle cost when these patients will say like, "Hey, I can't afford that," or are there other options? Because that's something that I hear in my practice all the time, and I'm sure a lot of other practices hear that. So how do you handle that in your own practice?
Yeah, that's, a very challenging question, because some of our pharmacies are located in Medicaid populations where they don't have a lot of disposable income. But I always say, well, let's take a look at, maybe our expenses. If we are eating very poorly every single day, and maybe we're a smoker, and we have these expenses that go into that. Well, if we can change your lifestyle and change the inputs so that we're reducing our expenses on fast food, or reducing our expenses on cigarettes or alcohol or whatever it may be, now we have more of a disposable income. And it's interesting because I will say or have that conversation in those Medicaid populations, and it will make sense to them. And I think what it's important is because they have more to lose. And so when they're ready to commit, they're committing all the way. And so they actually end up being the population that finds the most success, because when I tell them, hey, this is the changes that we need to make, they're like, all right, let's do it. I'm writing it down. We're going to start this tomorrow and we're going to make those changes. And so I think it's just realizing that a lot of times we're going to be able to pay for these services or these vitamins, professional strength vitamins, whatever it may be. It just might look a little bit different for other people. But at the end of the day, I always say the most expensive vitamin or the most expensive supplement is the one that's not getting absorbed. And so if they're taking a supplement or interested in health and wellness and they're, considering taking something, I much rather spend $20 or $30 on something that's getting absorbed as opposed to $10 or $15 that you're just peeing out.
Right.
And so having that conversation with people is always at the top of mind.
Yeah, that's smart. I said this in the last podcast. I'm going to beat around this bush a little bit, but I'm going to ask it anyways. I think one of the things I admire about you, and I've said this to Logan as well, is you walk the walk. The health advice, the supplement advice, you follow it. I don't know if that's super common, maybe across the board in the pharmacy space. And a lot of times I think part of the challenge is you're recommending stuff you don't really believe in, you don't personally take, you don't walk the walk. How important do you think that that's been to, your conversations with providers, your conversations with patients of like, I'm not telling you to change your lifestyle and ask you to do things I wouldn't do. I'm not asking you to take supplements that I wouldn't take. I'm not asking you, like, how important do you think that is in like the consistency of the message of like the messenger being also willing to take that same medicine, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I'll take it even one step further is it's not even just me, it's my friends and family now too, which I think is so cool because I never push anything, because obviously on social media, I'm probably at the top of most of my friends and family's feed, and that may or may not be cool. They may or may not like that. So they already hear or see enough of me on their phone. So when we're in person or when I'm talking with anybody, I'm not saying, hey, you should take this supplement. Hey, you should do this. I'm very kind of nonchalant about it. I let them bring it up to me if they're interested. And they always do. And the cool thing about it is my friends, my family, and myself, we're all kind of doing our paths look a little bit different, but we're all taking advantage of the opportunity for lifestyle medicine. And I think that, helps too, is it's not just, hey, I take this, so you should too, but my entire family does this, and this is the improvements that we're seeing. And anecdotally now I have all these unique stories like, hey, my aunt did this and she lost weight, or hey, my cousin did this and they had more energy, or hey, my sister did this and they were able to get pregnant. And so having all these anecdotal stories of close loved ones and people who once were struggling and now have seen improvements is so helpful too. Because at the end of the day, somebody might look at me and say, hey, well, he's just trying to sell me a supplement. But I always tell people, I don't want you to think I'm trying to sell you anything. In fact, if you think that I'm talking a whole bunch of garbage and you don't want to do it, that's fine. But I just want you to know and be informed so that you can make an informed decision on your health and wellness. And if I give you all the keys to be successful and you still don't choose to do that, at least I feel like I did my job, my due diligence as a pharmacist. And so I think, being able to walk the walk, and that was really important for me too, as I finished pharmacy school, because I think as a pharmacy student, you don't always take good care of yourself. You try to, but you have some other responsibilities. But just getting out there and running more, eating healthier. I eat a lot of salmon nowadays, which I never thought I would.
They can get salmon to Iowa?
But never said it was fresh salmon, but it's not out of the Iowa River, though. I promise that.
Yeah.
But I do every week. I do lectures with all my pharmacies, and every single lecture we talk about the supplements that we'd recommend, but we also talk about how to achieve that same supplemental success with nutrition. And every single time we talk about the Mediterranean cardiometabolic diet, and every single time we talk about omega-3s. And every single time I say you can get that by taking this pill, or you can get that by eating this food. And, quite frankly, with omegas being a very depleted nutrient in our diet, and with a lot of newer research coming out that says maybe even 4 to 5 grams a day would be helpful for mental health and other conditions, taking 4 to 5 capsules of a 1 gram omega product might not be as appealing as to taking 1 or 2 capsules and then getting incorporation of omega-3s with your diet. So I even, eating more salmon, eating more omega-3s, using a lot of extra virgin olive oil, getting, your avocado in there and getting all the healthy nutrients from food, I can feel the benefits from that. And so when you feel the benefits, then you're able to have another conversation with the patient that goes beyond just supplements. And now we can talk about how we can supplement from nutrition as well, which I always think is an important thing that patients like to hear too, because I don't want them to think that they're dependent on supplements. And that's actually one of the things that we always say is this is what you're going to start with, but I want you to know that if you follow the recommendations, you can achieve this successfully through your nutrition, through your diet. Is it easy? Absolutely not. But can you do it? Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I kind of want to roll off of that a little bit, but there's this whole issue with, right, deprescribing medications. But, what I see a lot of times in more the influencer pieces with supplements is that people are just recommending a crap ton of supplements. It's like, well, you don't want somebody on that many. One, they're not going to take 16 supplements a day. It's just not going to happen. And so I really like the fact that you're kind of mentioning like, hey, we try to deprescribe them down from their supplements, use the ones that they need, but also, being realistic and not just saying, hey, I just want to sell you as much crap as I can. Take these 10. I really like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, when I talk to providers, I talk about what my opinion of the 3 phases of healthcare consumerism looks like. And one, it was the traditional model, meaning, hey, whatever a doctor says medication-wise, whatever prescriptions I should take, I'm going to take because he's smart and I listen to everything he says. Nowadays is where we're at. We're in this kind of phase change of people are like, hey, I want to kind of develop an opinion on my own. And a lot of that's leaning towards natural medicine or nutrition. Now, it's still very challenging for those people to accept the fact that they could eat a very healthy diet instead of taking supplements. But I think that's the third phase change is when people realize that one, it's not just the doctor who says whatever they say I need to do. Two, it's not just I can take natural supplements. But three, I can maybe take some supplements, but I also can eat a very well balanced diet. And I'm excited for that because I think that phase change is going to occur again in the next 5 years or so. But I think it's just preparing people to say, hey, we can make this small change today. So hopefully we can, in 5 years, we're at that full deprescribing off of supplements and just eating a well-balanced diet. But, we provide just as much education of deprescribing of prescription medications as deprescribing supplements as well. So at the end of the day, most people don't say, I want to be off of prescription medications. Most people won't say, I want to be off of pills. And supplements are pills too. Now, are they different? Absolutely. But I think in 5 years or so, people might say, oh man, I switched all my prescription medications to supplements. This is great. But now I'm on 10 supplements and I don't want to be on all these supplements. How do I deprescribe off these pills too? So I think, putting the information out there to have them know that that's not the end goal really builds trust with them too, because a lot of times they used to think, oh, you're a pharmacist, so you want me on prescription drugs. I don't want them to say, oh, you're an integrated pharmacist, you want me on supplements. I want them to say, oh, you're a pharmacist, you want the best for my nutritional metabolic reserve, whether that's through supplementation or nutrition.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's well said, man. That's well said. So for those that might be interested in, kind of talking to you further, picking your brain, I guess talk a little bit about real quick the consulting that you do if people are looking for more help or more information about being a pharmacy owner, kind of doing some of the stuff that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unique things going on in pharmacy right now to make pharmacy practice more viable. About 6 months, we started doing drug-induced nutrient depletion consulting with other pharmacies interested in implementing that service. And so what that looked like was the pharmacy reached out to us and said, hey, we would love the opportunity to wholesale rooted intuition and, provide education to our staff about how they would go about making those recommendations. So some of my time spent nowadays is consulting with pharmacies to talk to them about, hey, this is the supplement line that you can carry, rooted intuition, but here's how you're going to talk about it with patients. And so we spend an hour or two every single week talking about, this is the supplement, this is why it's professional strength, this is why it's better than your generic one at Costco, Amazon, etc. But this is how we talk about it. This is who would benefit from it. This is a drug that you might see, and this is a supplement that you might be able to recommend instead, or this is a supplement that will be synergistic so that they don't have to increase their dose of that prescription drug or add in an additional agent. So that's something that we've been doing nowadays, is doing a lot of consulting for drug-induced nutrient depletion and functional medicine, and that's tied into compounding too. But another big consulting gig that's kind of been going on nowadays is long-term care at home. It's also been payer engagement, but ultimately we're trying to make people healthier so that they don't have to go into a long-term care facility or go into or they can be as independent as possible ultimately. So there's a lot of credentialing that goes along with that and making sure that we're following the rules. So we've been doing some consulting on that. We've been doing a lot of different kind of unique consulting because we understand that pharmacy is a very challenging space right now. And we want to make sure that, one, pharmacies can stay viable financially for themselves and the community, but two, that they're doing it the right way. Because if you're not doing it the right way, that's not going to be sustainable. So all the different services that we've implemented over the course of the year, whether it's been cost plus pharmacy or functional medicine or drug-induced nutrient depletion, long-term care at home, adherence packaging, whatever it may be, grant writing, whatever it may be, we can now talk to patient or other pharmacies about how they can get involved into that. So that's been a big consulting gig for our innovative pharmacy solutions wing of our pharmacy.
That's awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link it down in the description of the episode and make sure that people have all the different ways that they can get a hold of you. I appreciate it, Tom, man, you coming on and sharing this information, but more importantly, walking the walk and doing the work that needs to be done to be the pioneer in some ways of some of the things that you guys are doing. I think it's easy to announce a program. I think it's easy to announce a new initiative. I think it's a lot harder to do it consistently over an extended period of time and find some success. So, the pharmacy space needs more business-minded people, needs more people willing to fail and kind of figure it out. And that means, falling on your face a bunch of times, but getting back up. And I think you've done that. And you're reaping some of the benefits of getting back up. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing all that you've learned, and I know we'll have you on in the future to talk about another topic or just get an update on how things are going.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. That is episode 27 of the Money Medicine Podcast. We will be back with an episode here rolling up here pretty soon with another guest, again, contributing to the conversation of how do we make pharmacies and practices more successful? How do we help improve patients' lives? And how do we get under the hood of some of the leaders in this space and how they're finding success.